Hey guys, welcome back to Mind Keys. So today's video is coming to you live and direct from a hiking trail here in Austin, Texas. And I've got an amazing episode for you. In this video, I'm going to be teaching you something that no one else I've seen talks about in terms of depression, what might be causing it for you or someone you love, and the beginnings of how to fix it, how to heal it. So let's go ahead and get into it. So a couple quick notes before we go ahead and get into the video here. I'm walking beside a somewhat busy road here, you might be able to see. So if the mic picks up some traffic noise, my apologies to you. Also, just FYI, I've tried to shoot this video 3 times. Now this is my 3rd go at it, and I've had issues, whether it is the audio, whether it is the video quality, or just my own speaking skill, since I'm practicing and I've got to make a bunch of videos where I'm not that great until I get good. So hopefully this is all coherent, legible, usable. Also, I owe you, my few subscribers, a quick acknowledgement that I did say I would start uploading regular content and then didn't, and that's because I suddenly had to move to Austin. So I actually recorded this video for you on my drive out here, but unfortunately it was just too noisy in the car, so I wasn't able to keep it. But anyways, I wanted to just kind of acknowledge that, let you know that I am working on content for you guys, and that this is the beginning of some really substantial, juicy, potent shit. So I hope you love it, because like I said, nobody else out there is delivering this kind of content to you. This is some truth that was hard-won for me, and really could change your life if you're grappling with a kind of mild to moderate level depression and you're trying to understand why you're dealing with it and how it works. Watch on this video might give you the key that you need. All right. And it's probably worth acknowledging really quick for you guys that, you know, obviously I'm a coach, I'm a hypnotherapist, I'm somebody who's dealt with depression, I'm somebody who's familiar with studying the mind in terms of psychology, in terms of philosophy, in terms of experiential stuff like psychedelics and meditation and whatnot. But I'm not a licensed therapist. I am not a not a licensed psychiatrist. I'm not a licensed psychologist. I can't make diagnoses. I can't prescribe drugs. So for whatever that's worth to you, take my opinions, my insights, and my perspective with a huge grain of salt, because it's not going to be for everyone. This is just intended to kind of educate and entertain and offer you a possible alternative understanding of depression if it helps get you some of the change that you need. If it's not something that works for you, then please do go to a licensed medical professional. Also worth noting here, if you have severe depression, if you have intense, chronic, overwhelming, can't function, your body doesn't work right because your serotonin system is so dysregulated that you can't, your motor system doesn't work right, you literally can't get out of bed, that kind of thing, this is probably not going to address that level of depression. It certainly couldn't hurt to listen, but I can't guarantee you any sort of, impact or effect based on that kind of experience. Also, something I want to say really quick here is that it's very probable, it's very likely that depression, or what we call depression, is kind of this huge, broad blanket term, right? I mean, if you think about it, everything we know about reality and about life is encapsulated in language. So the way we use our language determines the way we experience life, right? This is kind of NLP 101, basic fundamental understandings of how language impacts neurology, right? So neurology being our nervous system, our brain, our sensing capacity, what it is we're able to perceive and experience in the world. So consider, please, that the word depression might be a very large, broad word, a large, broad term that actually envelops many different types of experiences, many different types of phenomena, in terms of this cluster, this umbrella of different types of sensations and emotions and thoughts and patterns and experiences that we would call depression. So when you're thinking of the word depression, Your conception of it might be different than, say, a therapist's, might be different than another person's type of depression. So there's probably different types of depression. And my point with that is that the type of depression I'm speaking to here in this video really boils down to kind of mild to moderate. When people say, oh yeah, I'm depressed, or I don't know where I'm going in life, or I don't know how to feel, or I've just lost it, that kind of thing, that kind of lost, disconnected, demotivated, life is blah, life is unfulfilling, life is unrewarding kind of depression. That's really what I'm speaking to here. I'm not speaking to necessarily, I'm so far gone that I can't even function at all depression. That might be a whole other experience. So anyways, let's get on with it. So there is a phenomenon in psychology where it's well known that if you try to, stifle down or numb out or disconnect from one type of pain or suffering or negative emotion, in order to do that, you effectively have to numb out all your emotions. So you can't just isolate out certain feelings and certain experiences you don't want to have and not feel them, because that comes at the cost of not feeling altogether. And I want to kind of set up this conversation by pointing that out, because that might be something you've heard before, or it may not. If that's news to you, please drink that idea in. It's an important one to understand. The basics is that the nervous system is one whole contiguous thing. You can't numb out part of it or manage part of it without managing the whole thing, because it's just one thing. So that is kind of the principle that's at play here. I'm going to describe it from a different point of view and a different kind of use of language, but that is essentially the phenomenon we're addressing here in this video. So in the coaching work that I study and that I do, there is kind of a fundamental understanding of what it is that drives our motivation, drives our passions in life, drives our experience of feeling engaged and connected, drives our experience of any form of a sense of aliveness that we have. And what that is your values, your value system. So what do I mean by values? Values are the kind of broad level, abstract things that are the most important concepts or ideas or experiences that you want to have in life. Typically, values will be things like, love, freedom, wisdom, insight, connection, joy, lightness, playfulness, intensity, aliveness, things like this. These kind of broad, abstract level qualities are typically what we would know as your values, right? And the understanding with values is that, really quite simply, values are what motivates us. Values are what drives our engagement. Values are what makes the nervous system kind of engage and get into gear and do things. It's our values that really drive all of our behavior, drive whether or not we're happy, and really what this boils down to is this. Whether or not you experience positive emotion or negative emotion boils down to how connected to your own values you are, how close you are to fulfilling your own values, how likely you are to experience your values. Do you feel like you're living your values or not? That's really kind of the fundamental question here. And really the understanding is that when we, are living our values, when we are in connection to our values, we tend to feel a profound sense of positive emotion. You could think of that as self-esteem, you could think of that as happiness, you could think of that as joy, you could think of that as well-being, you could think of that as ease, you could think of that as fulfillment and motivation and passion in life. So when you're fulfilling your values, you're getting those types of emotions. And conversely, what I think of as depression, what I think most people think of as depression when we talk about depression, really boils down to this. I think it's some form of your values have become a source of pain to you, and often so much of a source of pain that what ends up happening is it's almost like we try to numb out or delete our values. We try to stop caring about our values. We stop trying to make a meaningful life based on the values that we have, and those values either kind of disappear in the background, kind of recede away, or they become just corrupted with some sort of form of a negative sheen over them, a negative, emotional connection to them, or we just kind of lose our sense of values. We kind of shifted out of a set of values and we haven't found another set of values to replace the values that we've let go of. So I think that often what it is that we are, experiencing when we're, say we're experiencing depression, really is a loss of a value system. It is the deletion or the corruption of a value system and the lack of a sense of more values to replace it that might be more in alignment with who we currently are. And sometimes, our old values may still be relevant to who we are and who we want to be. They may still be the things we care about. Excuse me, I'm speaking quickly because I'm excited to give you this gift. I'm passionate about delivering this message. This is an important message. So I'm going to slow myself down for a moment here. We get, basically what I'm saying is that if your values are lost, damaged, wounded, deleted, or have otherwise been kind of impacted in a negative way, and you don't have a sense of values driving your life anymore, you're going to feel what we would call depression. You're going to feel demotivated. You're going to feel sad. You're going to feel negative. You're going to feel pessimistic. You're going to feel embittered. You're going to feel like things are pointless and meaningless. You're going to feel like whatever it is that is good about life is a lie, untrue, and that life itself is therefore meaningless and not worth living. And I think that there's a lot of different reasons why this kind of corruption can happen in the first place. I think that you can have a corruption of values or deletion of values in terms of, maybe you're heartbroken. Maybe you had a bad relationship that really, soured you on people. Or maybe you had an important loved one pass away. Or maybe you had, another one I see a lot of that I think is very common in this day and age is people getting a view of the world through the internet, through social media, through something like that, through, online. And they encounter some piece of information that radically disrupts how they thought the world was, what they thought how life is and how it should be and what they want. And all of a sudden, when you have some sort of piece of what seems like objective information or clear information that radically disrupts what it is that you thought you wanted for yourself, and you haven't really second guessed why you wanted that thing or what, how important that thing really was to you. You kind of just took it as, took it for granted, and it was this value you had, and then all of a sudden some piece of information on the internet runs counter to that and sours it and wounds it for you and breaks it for you and destroys its meaning to you. All of a sudden you're just left with a gaping hole of meaninglessness. And I think that this is a lot of what we see happening in terms of the escalation and the rising of mental illness, in this day and age. I think a lot of it has to do with the internet being a disruptive force to our own value set. So take that for what that might be worth. And I think you can also think of that in terms of disillusionment, which might be actually ultimately a healthy thing and a positive thing. This is another video I'll do at another time because really all these ideas kind of branch together and connect. But this video is specifically about depression, right? So I'm not going to be diving into this other point, but there is another point here, which is that I think that disillusionment is part of the path of waking up. I think that when you're on a evolutionary awakening process path, that involves a disruption of your mental maps and models of what you thought life was and how you thought it should be, and all of a sudden you have that kind of shaken loose and proven to be false and illusory. And I think that this is, fundamentally what Buddhism does, what Hinduism does, or any sort of Gnosticism, or any sort of kind of liberational spiritual path, but I think this is also exactly what's happening in the world in this day and age with disruption via technology, whether that's the internet, whether that is competing business models, whether that is competing social, psychological ideologies and concepts and narratives. I mean, we have so much clashing information. And when you have clashing information, what you get is disruption. And when you get disruption, what you get is destroyed value systems and these gaping, wounded holes where people used to have a sense of certainty in life and a sense of knowing and a certain sense of direction, and what they're left with instead is just pain and loss. And then because we can't deal with pain forever, because the nervous system doesn't like to just constantly be in pain, what we end up doing is trying to numb that out, trying to stuff that down, and then that numbing out and stuffing it down just turns it into switching off all the emotions altogether. I hope this is making sense so far. And I hope that this video isn't too noisy in terms of the wind that I've been walking through, or too disorienting in terms of me doing a handheld shot here. I'm kind of just trying to be off the cuff because my computer at the moment sucks. And so editing video and recording video at home is kind of a pain in the butt right now. So it's actually easier to do a phone post for you guys, even though I'm kind of limited with what I can do with this. So hopefully this works for you. Anyways, I wanted to just kind of continue to elucidate this for you a little bit, because I think there's more to it. But obviously, just to kind of recap on what we've covered so far, if depression, or some forms of what we would call mild to moderate depression, that most people commonly experience, I certainly have for huge chunks of my time here on Earth. If that's the case, if what it is actually this kind of loss or corruption or wounding of your sense of values, and you're left with just this kind of void where there's no new values in place, and you don't have a new direction in life, or you don't have a new clear-cut idea of what it is that you want to work towards that creates meaning for you, right? So you're left with just this void of meaninglessness. The nervous system is going to down-regulate. It's going to downshift into more base kind of functioning. So your brain is going to go more your thoughts are going to become more simple, more black and white, more generalized. You are going to avoid nuance. You're going to avoid anything that causes you to self-reflect too deeply on it. And really, you're going to find your greatest reward in very simple base pleasures like junk food, like porn, like just distraction with online media in general, like social media, whatever else it might be for you, alcohol, yada yada, whatever your coping mechanism du jour is. And I think this is also a very interesting, important point, which is that the more pain we're in, the more we end up going towards different coping mechanisms. So if you are if you're doing a lot of coping mechanisms, if you are staying up late, gaming every night, in a bad way to avoid reality, and getting drunk every day, and eating shitty food that makes you feel tired and exhausted, all of that is not only going to add to and exacerbate your depression, but those are all signs and symptoms that you're in a lot of pain. So you may have numbed out, tried to numb out so much that the pain is seems like it's gone, right? But in effect, if you're acting out in all these different ways, it's important to recognize that those are all signposts and proof to you. This is your own self-proof we're talking about of the kind of pain you're in. So obviously, one of the ways to get out of that kind of pain is to start to identify what your values are. So if you've kind of, put yourself in a cul-de-sac of dysfunction and depression and, or what we could call depression and coping and, crappy lifestyle, then, if what I'm saying is correct, and if what I'm saying resonates for you, then the obvious antidote to it is to begin to identify what your values are now. So I'm going to do a separate video. I'm actually going to do a whole separate series on values and how to identify your values and the kind of power and the kind of enlivening, healing effect that there is in reclaiming your values and understanding how to take charge of your values and how to heal your relationship with your values and live into your values. But the basics of it that I just want to communicate for this video is simply, you want to start to identify what your values are and start to live into them. It's really that simple. And so you want to ask yourself the following question: what do I want? Like, what is it that I want? And then when you have that, what I would suggest is to simply write that down. Write down, 3 to 5 things that you want in life right now. And they might be material, superficial things like I want a new car, or I want a new gaming console, or I want, to lose 20 pounds, which is, maybe less superficial than a gaming console, but it might be a material thing like that. Or it might be something a little more abstract. I want to be happy. I want to be at peace. I want to have good relationships with my friends, or whatever it is for you, right? Write down 3 to 5 things. Okay, now that you have what you want down on paper, I want you to ask yourself the following question with each thing 2 or 3 times, okay? Again, I'm going to do a whole video where I demonstrate this process, but just talking you through it really quick so that you can start to get yourself oriented towards your values. Ask yourself the following question, which is, what will that do for me? So let's say I want a new gaming console. I don't, but I'm not a gamer. But if I were, let's say I want a new gaming console, right? Write down, okay, what will that do for me? So with a new gaming console, I will have access to all these new games. Okay, great. And what will having access to all these new games do for me? Well, they will allow me to have hours of joy and excitement. Okay, great. So write that down. And what will having hours of joy and excitement do for me? Well, having hours of joy and excitement will cause me to feel pleasure and passion in life. Okay, great. So maybe pause right there. You can always take it further if you want. But, okay, we've got pleasure and passion. So that is a relatively high level value. So that is something that is important to you, right? So there you go. That might be one of your values, pleasure and passion, right? And then, you can look at your life and be like, where else do I feel pleasure and passion? When's the last time I felt pleasure and passion in my life in general? Start to get the picture that perhaps this is part of why you're depressed, is that you're not living enough pleasure and passion, right? So it could be something like that. This is just an example. Whatever you end up for you, that's what it's going to be for you. Again, I will do another video on this process in depth, something that's a little more focused and less off the cuff, but I just want to kind of give you some sort of a sense of what I'm talking about here. I do have more to say about depression though, so let's carry on with the conversation here. Okay, so we've kind of defined what it might be that is driving depression, or really what this is an alternate explanation for what depression is. Maybe what we experience is depression. So I don't know for sure. This is what I found to be true for me. This is what I found to be true in conversation with other people, with clients, with friends, et cetera, et cetera. I can't say that this is fact. I can't, scientifically verify this for you. This is all in the realm of the subjective, obviously, because we're talking about internal personal experiences. But if we take that this is what depression is, right? At least for some people and some forms of depression. And we understand that, the feedback loop between neurology and thinking and subjectivity, and then, the neurochemicals that spits out, and then the behaviors that causes, and the kind of feedback loop there, right? So we understand that my thoughts cause emotions, right? Emotions cause biological reactions in terms of neurochemistry, right? So my thoughts cause emotions, cause neurochemistry to happen in my body. Neurochemistry causes me to feel a certain way and have a certain state, right? Okay, so neurochemicals, certain state drives a certain kind of behavior, right? That certain kind of behavior gets a particular set of results in life. And then those results give us a reason to feel and think a certain way, right? So if I, for example, if I am depressed, that might mean I'm not generating a lot of serotonin. Probably means I'm not generating a lot of serotonin in my body. That's what, what psychology would say. And if that's the case, if I'm low serotonin, we know that means I'm more likely to have certain kind of body language behaviors. I'm more likely to kind of be hunched head and shoulders slouched over, and I'm more likely to think, kind of be internally focused, right? And to think a lot about what's wrong in my life, what's wrong in life in general, what's broken in the world, or this kind of thing, right? So it will cause a certain set of, and that thinking, of course, will feed back into having less of a reason to have serotonin, which will cause you to be less assertive, less forward, less joyful, less extroverted, which will cause you to behave less in that way out there in the world with other people, which means you will have less social connections that go well, you'll have less opportunities come your way, you'll have more reason to feel bad, in short, right? So there's a feedback loop here that goes on between mind and body, between perception, neurochemistry, and behavior, and results out in the world. And so it's important to understand and start to map out that loop for yourself so that you know different ways to interrupt that loop and to kind of deviate from that kind of set of things. There are certain places where it's harder to deviate from them and places where it's easier to deviate from them. So again, I'll save that for another video too. But I wanted to, sorry, I'm kind of walking over the place. Hopefully this video isn't dizzying as fuck for you as it is. If it is, my apologies. I'm still playing around a lot with the different ways that I shoot and style my videos. Anyways, I wanted to get to looking at what the opposite of depression might be, because I think that that's also a useful bit of information here. So if depression is some form of loss of a connection to values, whether that is a wounding of values or what I think of as almost like an absence of values, like a sense of deletion of values, then the opposite would be obviously having a strong connection to your values. But I think there's another piece here that I want to deliver to you that maybe might be familiar to you, might not, but might be empowering, might be something that could be helpful and healing, or at least give you some more insight into the larger picture here of what we're talking about in terms of depression and values. So let's get into it. So, okay, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the idea of flow state or flow state psychology. There was a psychologist, there still is, I believe he's still alive, his name's Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. And a few years ago, probably 2014, 2015, there was kind of a couple books making the rounds and kind of a lot of talk and a buzz and a hubbub about his work, which has to do with flow state. And if you're not familiar with flow state, it's basically the kind of being in the zone, being like firing on all cylinders, and where you're in that place of kind of effortless action, effortless success, effortless achievement, effortless behavior, where your focus just zeroes in on one thing and you end up doing it incredibly well, and it feels completely effortless, and yet you're breaking all your personal bests of your past and you're kind of just excelling in every possible way. You see this in domains like sports. You see this in domains like, music, musicians, performing arts in general, so actors, acting, stuff like that. You also see it, I think, to a lower degree, to a lesser degree, in other areas of life. In socializing, for example, I think is a great one. Conversation, dancing, movement, if maybe you're a jogger or you're a skater or a skateboarder or a whatever, I think you even see this in, gaming, in something like that, where you're doing an online thing. I think any place where you kind of get into this focused, narrow kind of bandwidth of attention, and you're just kind of flowing and excelling, and it gets easier and better and better and better. I think when you have that kind of experience, you're in some degree of a flow state. At its best, flow states are powerfully addictive. They're also things that provide us with perhaps some of the most meaningful, transcendent, potent experiences in life. I do think that, just as a tangent, I know psychedelics are a big topic on my channel, and some of you are probably watching because you're interested in psychedelics. So I do think, and I'll probably do another video on this at some point, I do think psychedelics offer flow states. I think this is part of why they're so compelling and so interesting and so healing. Anyways, back to my main point about flow state, which is, I think that when we're looking at flow states and we're looking at all of that, what I read, what I understood from Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi is that these are not only powerfully addictive, they're powerfully healing for the nervous system. And they are things that define people's happiness in life so powerfully that you could have a person who is otherwise very dysfunctional. Someone who is, he used the example, I think, in the book or in one of the books I read of, say a surfer living in a little shack on the beach with no money to his name, but he goes out surfing every day and hits flow state every day, and he's profoundly fulfilled and happy with his life. Or you could look at the same thing with like a musician, like a jazz musician who improvises and hits flow state regularly on stage, but maybe he's barely making enough money to squeak by to get to the next gig and to keep living. You might see this in all kinds of areas, but the point is that flow state delivers us a profound sense of emotional and mental fulfillment and well-being, even if the conditions of our life kind of suck and we are generally feeling kind of depressed, down, and like things aren't working or would have the reasons to, right? So you could have structurally a life that might seem like shit, pardon the swear word, on the surface, but if you have enough flow state in your life, what you'll experience is a deep and profound sense of fulfillment and connection and happiness and joy in life. So the more flow in a person's life, the less of a chance that they're going to be depressed, which I think is very important to understand. And what's interesting about that, if you think about it, is that, so we have flow as an antidote to depression. And part of what makes that so interesting is that really what that is like a deep immersion in at least some of your values, if you think about it. So if you're in a flow state, right, if you're just on and you're going, you're doing something you love by definition. You wouldn't be that motivated to go into it so hard that you hit a flow state if you didn't find it immediately rewarding. So the fact that you find it rewarding means that it's something you value, right? Or that it hits your values, right? So because there's more than one way to say you have a value of joy and passion, right? Or passion and pleasure, like we were talking about earlier. If that's the case, there's more than one way to hit passion and pleasure in your life, right? So there's more than one avenue, more than one path to meet your values. So let's say that flow is a reliable and consistent way for you to meet some of your values. And let's consider for a moment that part of the reason people feel depression is that whatever it is that caused them a sense of flow in life, they've lost. And they don't have any sort of area of hitting a flow state. So another way that you can start to inoculate yourself against depression and start to heal depression would be to find something in life for you, whatever that might be, that you hit flow state in. So, you know, I know I kind of badmouth, it's just coming to mind right now, I know I kind of badmouth gaming earlier as a coping mechanism because, let's be honest, sometimes it is a coping mechanism and an escape, thing. But I do think gaming is one of those interesting things that can also be a flow state and a reward mechanism at the same time. It's all in how it's used, like anything else. And I think this is why people are so addicted to gaming, amongst other reasons. There are all kinds of other things you can do to hit flow. You know, some are going to be healthier than others, but I think as part of the recipe of reclaiming yourself from depression, you want to start to think about what are the flow state, areas of flow state in my life? What are the things I do that put me in flow when I'm at my best or it's at its best? And also you want to think about, if you don't have any of those things, what might be something in life that you would like to do or that you're curious about or interested in, that if you got good enough at it, might be a source of flow state for you. So I hope this is starting to make some sense. I know I talk fast sometimes. I know I'm kind of verbose and I ramble a lot. I'm certainly passionate about this topic because I think a lot of the depression that people experience, quite frankly, is somewhat avoidable and healable. And I just think it's rather tragic to see more and more of that happening in the world at this time. So I wanted to just kind of make this video for you guys and help you start to see that there's a structure to your experience of depression. And if you're experiencing it or someone you know is, this is probably what's going on behind the scenes. There's some amount of this sense of wounded values at play here. And so I wanted to just kind of bring that up here. So hopefully this, becomes a gift in your life. I'm really hoping that this video, as imperfect as it is, offers you some sort of insight, some sort of hope, some sort of a path forward in terms of how to undo any depression you've experienced. I want this video to be a gift. This is really intended to be a gift from my heart to you, from my mind to you, from the things I've learned and seen and from my studies. And because I don't see anybody talking about this stuff, it just feels To me, this feels so obvious, and yet it's not being spoken nearly enough, and I think it needs to be out there. So hence this video and this message for you. I hope you liked it. I hope you got some value out of it. I want you to know that I will be doing more of a series on depression. I'll be doing, this is just video 1 of an ongoing series on depression. And I will be talking about psychedelics and depression and kind of my insights about that. I think there's a lot to say there as well. I'll also be doing a series on values. Like I said, I'm going to be doing multiple series on kind of these foundational aspects of personal development, because there's a lot of content like this that I see and that I've come to understand that I don't think is being put together very coherently or in the way that would really satisfy me, and if I was in a position of wanting to know this information, kind of get you there most quickly. So I will be doing a series on values, so I'll be teaching you how to discover what your values are and then how to live in alignment with them and what the benefits of that might be for you. And I'll be doing more talks about microdosing. I'll be doing more talks about psychedelics in general, how to work with them, my thoughts and my experiences, the things I've learned, and how to transform social anxiety as well, which was kind of what I started the channel on. I have a lot more to say about that as well, so look for that content. If you got something out of this, it would be really meaningful to me if you hit the like button, if you comment, if you let me know if this resonates or not for you. If I'm just some weird kook on the internet who makes no fucking sense, let me know. If I'm somebody who is speaking the words that you've always kind of felt but never had the words to say, let me know that too. That anything is meaningful in terms of feedback. And I hope you're well, and I hope this video starts to inspire you a little bit. And thank you so much for watching. And there's a lot more to come, so please watch this space. All right, take care, guys.